Boa tarde, obrigada a todos pela presença. A palestra vai ser em inglês, então a partir de agora eu vou dar uma mudada no idioma. Good afternoon. Today, the Center of Excellence in Social Technologies presents to you the Ph.D. Julita Vasileva. She is a full professor at the University of Saskatchewan, and she is recognized worldwide for her researches in informatics in education and for her works in inclusion. She is a chair in the Natural Sciences and Engineering Council of Canada of Women in Science and Engineering on the Prairies region. And today she is going to talk about the women in science. Please, if you have a question, you can ask during the talk. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So, sorry, if you are here today, you have to wait until the talk ends to make questions. And if you are watching live, you can say, sorry, ask your questions during the talk.
Now it works. Okay, nice to be here, and I'm happy to be part of such a high-tech talk, which will be video streamed and questions asked remotely. I hope from here I will not ruin the plans for the video conferences, for the video conferencing or the live streaming. Is it okay? Is it okay? Okay. Okay, so I was a Prairie Chair for Women in Science and Engineering. This is a program which ANSERC, this is equivalent agency, funding agency, like the Brazilian CNPG or something like this, CNPQ. And they created a program specifically to stimulate, to encourage women. They have created many different programs to encourage women to go into engineering, sciences, in academia particularly. So this is one of these programs which has 5 regional chairs. So these are full professors who dedicate half of their time to initiatives, programs to help empower women or increase the participation of women in science. So I held this chair between 2005 and 2011. So I've collected a lot of information and a lot of knowledge, and unfortunately not a solution. I think the solution is still very far away, but there are a lot of things which can be done. So let me share some of this knowledge with you. First, I want to start with a very recent piece of history. Recent because I didn't know, and it's probably a shame, but I don't know how many of you have heard about Mary Somerville. Yeah, I hadn't, you have, from Facebook, from what I shared on Facebook, right? Yeah, I hadn't heard about her, but apparently this is the woman because of whom the word scientist was coined. The word scientist comes because she was so remarkable. She created this treatise on the connection of the physical sciences, which created a link between different things which at that time were considered as completely different, unrelated pursuits of knowledge. Physics, math, astronomy. And she wrote this treatise which somehow connected everything together, and her peers gave her due credit. They really liked this thing. So the dean or the don of Cambridge University wrote a very praiseworthy, praising article about her. And because until that time, people who did science were called men of science. There was no special word for scientists. It was called men of science. So in this treatise, in his praise of the treatise, he used the word scientist, which he explained should cover both genders, and it is like an artist. Artists at that time already could be women and men, so it's a gender-neutral word which reflects specifically this ability of women to connect things together, to bring things together, because men typically go really deep and pursue one area or one problem, while women seems to be able to divide their attention to many things and to connect things together. Okay, so she and Caroline Herschel were the first female members of the Royal Astronomical Society, which was a big recognition at that time. Astronomy was a very important area, as it is now, actually. So there are many, many more women. Like, of course, these are better known, especially Lise Meitner is very, very well known. Jocelyn Burnell, not so much, at least I didn't know much about her, but you see, she discovered pulsars, and Vera Rubin, astronomer, confirmed the existence of dark matter. Now, the interesting thing which unites these three women, that none of them has received Nobel Prize. And the second one, for example, was kind of demonstratively neglected because far more junior colleagues who worked under her guidance got the Nobel Prize and she didn't. A weird thing, right? And Vera Rubin, who apart from being a brilliant astronomer, raised three children, all of whom have PhDs in sciences, including two daughters with PhDs in sciences. She's in her 90s now, and she's still alive, and she still hasn't got them. So recognition is not very quick to come to women. You know, it seems like artists, they have to die first, and then many years later, maybe. Okay, so here are some more amazing women in science. And some unsung heroes which recently started being unearthed, like, for example, all the black women mathematicians working for NASA. But you know better about Grace Hopper and all the unsung, at that time, programmers who were working the big machines, the ENIAC, and so on. Because at that time, programming was not considered a prestigious job. The programmers were like technicians, but the really important, the heroes of the computing era were the engineers who built the machines with wires and chips and so on. Okay. Now let me show you some statistics about women, particularly as they go through the educational pipeline. So starting from BSc, Master's, PhD, and then assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. Now, first of all, I have to warn you, my statistics are old. They are from the time when I had still the chair, and so this is like, I finished the chair 5 years ago. And compiling statistics is not easy. It's a very difficult job because they're not reported. You rely on statistics by Statistics Canada, in my case, or institutional statistics. The universities, each university keeps statistics, but they are cut in a different way. They are not convenient, to get the information which you want. They somehow group, aggregate things together in non-meaningful ways. For example, the second one, Kaut Almanac, it presents statistics about enrollments and also faculty, gender divided, right? But for some reason, they combine computer science and library sciences. Now, for gender analysis specifically, this doesn't make any sense because library sciences, information sciences, they're mostly women, while computer science is mostly men. So when you put both together, the statistics look much better. So it's hard to make this statistical. It has taken me months to collect statistics and to make them properly. So these are old statistics, but they are still pretty accurate. I keep track whenever I see data appearing, and I compare with what I know, and there hasn't been much change at all. I have no data about Brazil, but I'm sure that those of you who have been interested and have been looking will find that actually the data in Brazil is probably very similar. It's similar in all developed countries, and I count Brazil as developed country. So here is she figures. Now this is a statistic which is done every 3 or 4 years by the European Union. And it's particularly for gender. They track the advancement of women in different areas, in leadership, education, and so on. These figures are for representation of women and men in sciences and engineering. And as you see, the women are blue, the men are yellow, and the two different shades of blue and yellow represent past year and then a current year. So as you see, in 2003, the men initially started 70% at bachelor, and then dropped down to 66, 64, then they grow again to 68 at graduating bachelor, graduating PhD, this one, I don't know if it works. Maybe I'm holding it the other way around. Wait a second. Yes. Okay. Oh, no, it's flipping the slide. Okay. Let me see, how do I? Yes. So, okay, so this is bachelor. What happens here? The first one is a bachelor, finished bachelor, masters, PhDs, there where it's 38 on the bottom. And then grade C, grade B, and grade A, these are the professors. Assistant, associate, and full professors. So you can see the trend of the graphs is that generally, a lot of students start, then they drop down because it's hard, right? Many drop, but then towards the end, this is the percentage, right? This is not the numbers. This is the percentage. So they're like mirror images, the two graphs. So this one at PhD level already, you have 66% men, and at assistant professor 70%, then 77%, and at full professor 91% of full professor body is men. The women is exactly the opposite, right? It kind of, especially when you come to professor positions, it really goes rapidly down. So they call it the scissors diagram. It looks like a scissors, right, the shape. Okay. So below I've put the Canadian numbers, which are very similar to the European numbers. And generally the numbers, the percentages, not the numbers, the percentages are pretty similar in all developed countries. Okay, this is more specifically for Canada. You see associate professor, assistant, associate, and full professor. The total and the percentage of women. Okay. And this is in all fields. So the orange bar is percentages of women in all fields at this rank, while the blue bar is only in science and engineering, right? So 7% to 8% is the percentage of women full professors. Okay, so why is this? And a lot of people have been doing studies and devoting careers on finding out what are the reasons. So I'll give you just a spectrum of reasons and with some solutions. Okay, so the biggest probably thing is work-life balance. The second thing is how women choose areas. The women's areas are different from men's typical areas with harder chances for success. Then collaboration, how women collaborate plays a role. Stereotypes, I've put it quite down to the bottom, but it's just only for presentation purpose. It's a major reason. This is actually the evilest hurdle which trips women everywhere. Stereotypes, which other people hold against women, but also which women hold as well. I'll show you, these stereotypes are not a patent for men. Everybody shares these stereotypes. And finally, communication style. And I will end my talk with some very practical advice about how to communicate so that you are respected and to succeed. Okay, so work-life balance. Now, in our days, I think, especially with technology and also with the challenges of economics, with the crisis 2008 and so on, work-life balance is becoming very hard for everybody. It's not just for women. It's impossible to escape from work. We work from home, but actually we work all the time. It's 24-hour workday. You are always available, answering emails, SMSs. You are expected to react all the time. But this is the same for men and women. Now, a little bit harder, not a little bit, but quite a lot harder for women, though. Why? Because women have to kind of answer also to society expectations. Women have the children, right? So it's expected that women take care of the children. Women are usually the primary caregiver of children. Now you're all young, but when you get my age, your parents will be getting sick. And then usually it's the women who are responsible to take care of the elderly. And it's very hard to escape from this responsibility. It's not even good to escape. Women don't want to escape. They love their parents, they love their children. They want to be able to do both things. And they succeed. Most women do succeed who really put their mind to it. But it's very hard. So many women cannot be blamed for just quitting. It's really tough. Especially tough in academia. I don't know how competitive is the situation here, but in Canada, in the United States, to be successful academic, you have to devote over 60 hours, working hours per week, over 60. And my suspicion is, this is old data, I expect that this now has increased. Top researchers spend 80 hours a week. They spend them at work in the lab. You're expected to produce, to be successful academic in Canada, at least in computer science, you're expected to produce 7 papers per year. And these should be good papers, not junk conferences, right? There are people who produce 20. So they're pushing the bar. They're pushing the bar all the time. And you have to work and work and work. And how do you do this while juggling childcare, shopping, cooking, and especially if you didn't marry well and you got a guy at home who sits and watches TV all the time, expects you to do everything, right? How do you do that? So, okay. So according to statistics from the University of Calgary, women spend 2 full days more per week working household and child care related duties. That's amazing. 2 full days. So 16 hours basically, more spread over the week. Okay. Here is basically the diagram where I got this from, but you can't see it. So women also face a harder choice because, there is the biological clock. And if you don't have children young, you may risk not having children at all. And some women have to make this decision, right? To not have children if they want to succeed in their career. They either make this conscious decision or just it goes on and on and on, the master's, the PhD, then faculty, then until you get tenure, until you get a grant and so on, you postpone it, and then it's too late, right? So For example, these are some statistics. You know, at University of Calgary, 65% of female faculty are married, but 83% of the men are married. So men don't have to make this choice. They usually find a partner outside of academia who is able to devote more time to home, to care, and so on, and there's no problem. Women who achieve tenure are more than twice as likely as their male counterparts to be single 12 years after PhD. And the chances that a tenure-track woman will divorce are around 50% more than their male colleagues. Right? So it's not easy. This is tough choices, right? You pay a price. Another thing is that women academics usually marry other academics. So you have then this two-body problem, which I don't know if you encounter here, but in Canada, in America, it's a very tough problem because usually you have two faculty and it's impossible to find a job for both at the same place. So traveling from one place to another because one of the partners is not happy, they don't have a good job, and this is tough. So, of course, for these things, universities have a huge role to play. And a university which is puts it as a priority to promote women and to help women succeed, they will have to put money into this. They have to first of all, allow for or create dual hiring policies, which means if you have an excellent candidate who is a woman and she has a husband with her, well, hire the husband too. Usually, this husband will be a good researcher as well. You know, you're not hiring a bad guy, because this woman would not marry somebody who is not good, right? So, but if you want to have this kind of, if you want to hire more women, you should be ready to hire their spouses as well. Childcare is very important. Who is going to take care of the children? Many universities do create childcare on campus, in the premise of the university, so that you come to work, you bring your child in, your child is close to you, and it's very nice. Like universities like this really have good conditions for women. And for men, actually, the interesting thing is now I'm telling measures about women, but everything which I say apply for men as well. Men and women of course, there is a difference, but it's more you can think of them as two normally distributed curves. And many of the features of women, which I'll be talking later on about communication styles and so on, they apply to many men as well. Like, if you take like masculine and feminine as two extremes, you can find really huge difference. But many of the things actually apply for men as well. Okay, so now imagine women during already hired in a faculty position. It makes a big difference what kind of research area you're working in. And I'll talk a little bit about this as well. How you collaborate with others. And there are differences, documented differences between men and women, choice of co-authors, and how credit is assigned. And then some specific things about women, which most men don't have, most men, but maybe some men do experience as well. The invisibility syndrome and the imposter syndrome. And then finally, I'm going to talk about gender stereotypes because this is a very, very big topic. Okay, so choice of research area. I added there and duties once you're in faculty position. So how do men and women choose their research area? Men typically choose an area where they have high chances to succeed. Women are more idealistic. They don't think about success necessarily, but they choose areas which they feel that they can make a difference, where they can help humanity, caring areas. Now, this is perhaps too stereotypical, but you can see this. If you look, now my area is computer science. I don't know how many of you are computer scientists? No? How many are engineers? Okay. Okay, so in computer science in particular, women tend to choose areas which have to do with humans. The human-computer interaction, how the social impact of computer technology, and rather than the purely either theoretical or purely technical areas. They seek more interdisciplinary areas. And why? Because they want to see the impact, how the technology is applied in the real world. They want to make a difference, right? So they naturally gravitate towards these areas. The problem is that these areas are not considered as a pure areas by the department in which the woman is hired. Usually, if she's in the computer science department, you have the networks people, you have the theory people, you have people who consider themselves hardcore computer scientists, and they look down to stuff which is not real computer science, you know, it's kind of some mix of psychology and computer science, you know, second grade stuff. So HCI, the area of HCI has actually managed to create itself a better image, at least in North America. It's quite well respected. And, you know, if you look, the researchers in the HCI area, human-computer interaction, they are like 60-70% women there. So, and it's a respected, at least in Canada, it's a well-respected area. But I don't know how it is here in Brazil, whether HCI research is considered real computer science or... Now, apart from being cross-disciplinary and not enjoying so much respect, these areas are harder to do research. You need to learn not only your own discipline, but also other disciplines. You need to talk with these other people to find common language. You need to interest them for collaboration. These are harder problems. Another thing is that the chance of finding a competent reviewer to review your work is lower because fewer people are working. So it's harder to get your papers published. And generally it's tough. And there is an interesting effect that whenever an area like HCI, human-computer interaction again, once the area becomes more feminized, when more women come into an area, then the men leave. Suddenly, it becomes non-prestigious to be in this area, and men don't want to do it. Also, the salaries are not so high. So this, however, in HCI we haven't yet observed this, but I expect that this is going to happen because it has happened in many different areas. For example, in education, teacher was a man profession in the past, like 100 years ago. When women came into this field, men left. There are very few men who actually apply to be, to education school. The same thing is with family doctors. Medicine is generally a prestigious discipline, and but because women stormed into medicine sometime in the 60s, 70s, and they were successful. They a lot of women went into medicine. They, however, all go into family medicine, while men tend to go into the specialities which are much better paid, much more prestigious, and so on. Now, the reasons, it's not just men, women, I'm very much simplifying it. The reasons are complex. It has to do, again, with work-life balance. For medicine in particular, and for teaching, these are good jobs for women because you do have the flexibility. If you're a specialist, you may not have this flexibility. It's much more stressful. So women tend to, because they have all the child care and elderly care, they tend to gravitate to things which allow them a little bit more flexibility and balance. Okay. So another thing which I merged here because I couldn't find a good place to put it is when duties are assigned to faculty, I don't know how it's in Brazil, but in Canada, usually the department head talks with every faculty and assigns them the teaching, what you're going to teach this term or this year, and then what kind of administrative duties you need to take. And women usually don't negotiate much. Men will be very decisive, and they will say, no, no way, I'm not doing this thing, you know, and they keep their time. And women, they don't want somehow to appear bad, and or simply they lack the courage, you know, to say no firmly, and they take on and take on and take on, and they end up doing far more stupid work, which actually doesn't bring them forward, because research is what brings you forward. Okay, so collaborating with others. So women, statistics show that women collaborate mostly with other women. And it's good. Why is it good? Because, well, there are many reasons. I've listed the reasons, and, you know, fewer women, of course, so, but, you know, of course, collaborating with women puts you in a position that you don't have somebody to speak very candidly, to give you information which is not kind of posted information about opportunities, about jobs, and so on and so on. If you have a collaborator who is close to you, you know, you may get access to very valuable career information. But if you are collaborating only with women, and they are very few, you know, then it's you are kind of excluded from the mainstream of the information which men share in different ways. Fewer potential referees, lesser access to information. So it's hard to encapsulate yourself as a woman working only with other women. Of course, you have to work with other men, and it's a good thing. The problem with collaborating with men is that usually men get the credit for the collaborative work. There has been a large study in the United States, maybe 2 years ago, which analyzed collaborations from 3 different disciplines. Not only science and engineering, also I think in social science disciplines. And they found that in every collaboration in which there was man and woman involved, the credit was given to the man and not to the woman. So now I'll speak about the syndromes, the invisibility. Now these are things which are problems which women experience. These are psychological states, you know, which women tend to get in. Invisibility happens when you well, it's not really psychological here. This is something which I guess every woman has experienced. You know, you sit in a meeting with many other men, and then you think you have a brilliant idea, you say it, nobody pays any attention, things go, you know, as if you haven't said anything. And then 5 minutes later, a guy says exactly the same thing, and everybody says, wonderful idea, wonderful idea. So you think, why? I mean, I said just the same thing like 5 minutes or 3 minutes ago. How come nobody noticed? Why do they applaud the guy? Applaud the guy. It's the same like with the collaboration, you know. Then you get interrupted. You start saying something, and then some guy interrupts you without any concern, just in the middle, because he has something important to say. And then he babbles for half an hour, and babbles nonsense, and nobody dares to interrupt him. This happens very often. I've experienced this so many times. Of course, I'm a polite person. I'll never interrupt him. But I wish, you know, I wish. So whenever you discuss research, you go to a conference, you discuss research, and then as soon as you start discussing with a man, it turns into other things. It turns about life, and it turns into chatter. And you want to discuss science. You're there for this purpose. But no, it kind of ends up talking about other things, which are really not very important. So the other syndrome is the imposter syndrome. This is now more of a psychological state where even extremely successful women have. They feel somehow guilty of their success. They attribute it to good luck that they've had, or to a lot of help from others, never to their own ingenuity and their own hard work. And I don't know why this is the case, but it is the case. It's documented very well in the psychology literature. Women tend to attribute success outside of themselves, and failure, they always blame themselves. For men, it's exactly the opposite way. They always attribute success to their own being so good, and failure, the world is guilty. The world is wrong. That's why. My husband, classical example, just before I came here to Saskatoon, driving, for some reason our car, it's very cold, you know, I'm trying to switch on the heating, and for some reason I switch off the light of the controls. And he says, no, I'll fix it. So he starts searching as he's driving. He's punching there to switch on the light, and he can't find it. And he says, idiots, how could they design such a bad design of this? Now, he doesn't, I blamed immediately myself for switching it off by mistake, but it doesn't come to his mind to blame himself for not finding the right button, right? It's these idiots who designed it so idiotic, such an idiotic design. You know, classical example, but that's how men are, you know. We have to be more like this, women have to be more like this, but how? You know? And some women even feel guilty and then try to diminish their success because they fear that this will make them less feminine, or maybe less attractive, or maybe somehow they feel uncomfortable with their success. Very strange thing. A man will be very proud and happy when he's successful. Of course, this self-doubt is very destructive, you know. It creates low self-confidence, which people project. When you interact with others, people judge you for the self-confidence, for your posture, for your voice, you know, and if you have no confidence, they ignore you. Maybe that's what the reason for the invisibility syndrome is like. Now stereotypes, okay. Now, first of all, I'll start with this, that everybody has stereotypes. Each of you has stereotypes and is biased. I'm biased too, you know, everybody's biased. And it's a survival mechanism, psychologically survival mechanism, which we have elaborated when we have no information about a particular individual. We rely on the stereotype because somehow evolutionary, you know, this has been useful, you know, maybe often these stereotypes give useful information, but not very often, not really, you know, in some cases maybe, but. So people judge you according to their own stereotypes, and you judge other people according to your stereotypes. And in addition, which is even more worse, you know, you behave according to your stereotypes. What stereotypes you have modulate your behavior, how you project yourself, you know, to the world. And if you deviate from the stereotypes, it could be penalized, right? If you are, as a woman, extremely assertive, your colleagues will not like you very much. They will actually think that you're aggressive, you're a bitch, you know, a brash. Yeah, that's what they say. In Canada, they say, oh, she's a bitch, you know. And this is just a woman who doesn't let herself being, you know, all the time stepped over. Yes. So, okay. So there are a lot of studies which show how you can mitigate this stereotype effects. For example, Malcolm Gladwell, I don't know if you have read this book, Blink. It's a very interesting book, which talks about how we have evolved to make so quick, intuitive decisions. We see a face and we already know if you like him or not, or like her or not. We talk like 2 minutes and we already know whether to trust this person's expertise or not. And very often these decisions are wrong. Very often they're wrong. But we do them all the time. So there have been a lot of studies done testing these kind of the effective stereotypes in academia, and they have been done again and again and again. Like, for example, this classical one. You send the same job application, the same CV, to many different faculties. But sometimes, half of the times, it's with men's name on top, and half of the times with women's. The men get invited for interview, they get job offer. Well, they didn't really get job offer because it was an experiment, right? They were warned that this is not a real person, but they were asked, how likely are you to offer a job to this person? And turned out the men were much more likely to be offered a job, and they were going to be offered higher pay as well. Well, if you know that it's a woman, first not invite her even to an interview, and if you decide to, you definitely offer a lower salary. The interesting thing is that these hiring committees, they were not men, they were men and women. So both of them have this prejudice. He gives also the example of orchestra auditions. There's a famous, Jibilidahi is a famous conductor who was very sexist. He was priding himself that he would never hire a female in his orchestra because women cannot play instruments. So there was no women, and then at one point, the law changed in Germany, and they forced him to do a blind audition. Because every time when a woman appeared, even if the committee liked her, somehow they always found a reason that she's not good enough. But once they had the interview behind the curtain, the applicant placed behind the curtain, suddenly they hired several women because it was considered good enough, right? So nowadays, all orchestras audition with screen. You don't see who is auditioning. All good orchestras. Okay. The Swedish study from 1999 found that women, similar study, this kind of sending curriculum vitas right around with men and women's name, they found that actually in order to get an offer, those women who got offer had about twice stronger record than the record of the men who got offers. So in US recently, they repeated this study. Maybe 2 years ago, I posted on Facebook, but I couldn't find it to bring the study today. Again, as you see there. Also, other people have studied women's success while employed, showing that women actually get smaller grants than men. For equivalent research records, number of publications, impact citations, and so on. Okay. Here is more. MIT, women had lower salaries, less lab space, smaller grants than men with equivalent records. Women with 8 to 9 years of postdoctoral experience who are employed full-time in tenure-track position are about nearly 6 percentage points less likely to get tenure. And women with 15 years of postdoctoral experience, so they should be already full professors, are almost 14% less likely than men to be full professors. So, very depressing. These studies are always extremely depressing. Teaching evaluations. Stereotypes play a role. Women teachers generally get worse evaluations than men. And this is due to complaints like, she's too quiet, we can't hear her, soft voice, I get this. Soft voice puts you to sleep. Yeah, or doesn't seem to know her stuff. That's student evaluation text, Interestingly, she doesn't know her stuff only if she criticizes the student, if she gives him bad mark. No criticism if she gives good mark to the student. Otherwise, she's incompetent. But the more remarkable thing is that men don't get this, that he's incompetent. If a male teacher gives a bad mark to a student, it's considered fair. Oh, I didn't learn for this, or, you know, he's tough but fair. But a woman, no, she's incompetent. And this is stereotype in the heads of the students. Yeah, though this one I said already. So the own stereotypes which we have in our heads are also limiting. You know, a woman would think, if I say no, I'll spoil the relationship. You know, or it's ugly to brag all the time about my own achievements. You know, let somebody else say something good for me. Or if I just work harder, somebody will notice and reward me. Forget about it. You know, reward never comes just in this way. You know, you have to fight for it. And he's so confident, you know, maybe he's right and I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't thought so deeply about the problem. In all likelihood, he hasn't thought very deeply either. He just blurts out the first thing which comes to his mind. And he trumps you because if he has the self-confidence, and even if you have spent a lot of time researching and you are sure that you're right, you know, maybe the group will believe him rather than you. Yeah. So, on the other side, however, women have really strong communication skills. And when women are not in academia but in industry, what happens is these skills are actually quite valuable because they also tend to like peace. And, well, some men as well, like a lot of men actually, have good communication skills and like peace. So they tend to try to strive for consensus. They're good negotiators. They tame down the passions. And that's why women, at least in Canada, very often in computer science progress, in computer companies, they progress to management positions. Now, they're no longer programmers. So men have kind of not a real, you know, IT person. They're managers. But nevertheless, it's good. These are good jobs, you know, and they give power and they're influential. So, and communication skills and peacemaking, consensus seeking is important. So these are not necessarily bad, you know, spoiling the relationship by saying no. You shouldn't be concerned about this, right? If you need to say no, you have to say no, and don't care about the relationship. But still, being aware that you will be perceived and judged harsher than a man in your position, because it's the stereotype, right? Again. Okay. So how to fight these stereotypes? So the first method to fight, and the most important thing, is to be aware that you have them. If you're not aware, you really believe that you're making the right decision, that you honestly are acting very fairly, you know, you believe you're right. Being aware of the possibility that you might be biased opens your mind. You consider other options. So this website, Implicit Harvard Edu, contains a whole bunch of tests where you can test your stereotypes with respect to many, many, many things. Not just men, women, but also about sexual orientation, about race, nationality, all kinds of different disability, and so on. Another thing, get educated about the impact of stereotypes and what the evil impact they can have on hiring, on promotion. In university, in Canada at least, all committees, department heads, deans have to go through a course of education about how to be aware of stereotypes and of questions. If you ask questions, seeking data, and so on, which could actually activate stereotypes. Usually at every hiring process, we have an observer who is watching, not to have a biased selection. Needless to say, in Canada, we have affirmative action. So at every hiring process, at least in sciences and engineering, if there is two candidates and one of them is a woman and they're equally qualified, the woman is given the position. Now, this is a very important thing. It's really important, but there are many ways around it. Because what does it mean equally qualified? You're comparing for a faculty position people who can never be exactly compared, right? They have different publications, maybe slightly different areas. So there is always, if you want to hire the man, they can always hire the man, right? By saying that, well, he was just simply better qualified. Then this rule doesn't apply. But the law says that, in equally qualified information situation, women should take the job. Okay. So, more measures, hire more women, affirmative action, yes, and pay special attention to the advancement of women. Mentorship is very valuable, especially for young faculty, and now this applies for both men and women. Mentorship is absolutely crucial. When a new person is in the job, they have to get inside advice, honest, friendly inside advice. For women it's more important because men are more likely to find mentors by themselves, because everybody's man and you can find somebody's sympathetic face much more easy. But a woman, if you're the only woman in the department, or two women in the department, you may happen not to like this other woman. So who is your mentor? Formal mentor programs actually work quite well. Our university has instituted mentorship across departments. So you can have a more senior physics professor mentoring mathematics or computer science, a new faculty. And it's very useful because there's so many unwritten rules which, if you don't know them, you're missing out, you're losing, really. Regular social events, which helps people connect. This applies also for students, by the way. Mentorship and organizing social events where people can get together and discuss. Okay. So I don't know how many minutes I forgot to trace the time, and I don't have a computer to see, but I have 11 more slides to talk about how to communicate for success. So these are very, very practical advice. First one, learn to speak louder and slower. A very important thing. Actually, sometimes the invisibility syndrome is just because they didn't hear you. Many men, not you young guys, but older men, they don't hear simply so well. Especially older guys who have earphones all the time, maybe young guys with earphones all the time. They simply don't hear. So speak loud and slowly. When you speak loud, it automatically slows you down. And you're better understood. And you make point and you project confidence this way. American women are, and Canadian as well. I'm not American born or Canadian, so I don't have this, but American women, they speak with really deep voice. This helps as well. It really projects authority, and it's harder to interrupt you when you speak with a deep, confident voice. Don't let others interrupt you. What I said, I usually when I get interrupted, I let it pass. Don't let it pass. Make a point of it. Interrupt back. Say, you just interrupted me. I didn't finish what I was saying. Right? Say this. Say, it's hard to say the first time. Afterwards, it gets easier and easier, and they learn very. They won't interrupt you. Nobody will interrupt you. Men and women, they won't dare to interrupt you. Okay. When you're under attack, now it can happen. You'll be bombarded with questions if you are defending a project which has proponents from the other side. You can be so get emotional. Don't interpret things personally. Usually, if they're attacking your idea, it's not you, it's the idea. So never lose your cool. Discuss. Don't feel scared. It's not about you. It's the idea. So discuss. Engage in discussion. Listen to their arguments and discuss. That's what has to happen. That's what men naturally do. They don't worry that somebody is attacking them. They will fight crazy and then they'll go to the pub and have a drink together. That's how we have to be as well. More like men in some sense. Yeah. Don't take it personal. Yes, that's it. So don't generalize and don't stereotype and don't think that if you don't know exactly what is the point of somebody, or if they can't make their point clear, ask. Ask them to explain, clarify it. Avoid making assumptions which may be completely false and answering to the assumptions which you imagine. Just be patient and ask. Ask questions. You win time as well. Okay. And always try to switch the tone to positive and constructive, rather than bickering and fighting for small things. Very important. Focus on the issue, never on the person. That's another very important thing. We women tend to be person-focused, focus on relationships, don't want to be an enemy with somebody. No, don't worry about that. Okay, so status orientation. Now, don't forget that what you say and how you say it impacts your status in the group. Everything is about status. People perceive you. It's, I just was saying, ignore the person, focus on the problem. But, it is also the person and the way you behave establishes your status in the group. And women are typically so anxious to please and to be liked. Don't worry, it really doesn't matter whether you're liked. You have to be respected. And if you think of yourself as a leader, actually you behave like this. You get into these shoes, you get into this role. And really it's powerful. I think this has helped me a lot, like this sort of self-confidence. So when you interpret a message, don't focus on the negative side. Again, it's a very instinctive reaction to focus on the negative, to fend off the negative part of the message. It's kind of a fear reaction, escape reaction. But try to find the positive side and focus on the positive side of the message. Another thing, when you talk about your work, don't talk about your difficulties. Don't talk about how overworked you are, how hard it is. Focus on how successful you are. People will perceive you as a successful person, not as a failure. If you're talking about how busy it is, how hard it is, well, she's struggling. Again, watch your sort of words. Now, this is for English speakers. These kind of hesitant words, maybe kind of, sort of, you might want to, which are polite, right? And we are very much conditioned to use these words in written, but also in email and also face-to-face. They are weak. They project weakness. Speak in decisive, clear terms. And watch your body language. We just had interviews for new dean in our college, and it was amazing. They recorded them, and I was watching them yesterday online. It was amazing to see the difference. So we had a guy, a male applicant, who was wonderful. I really liked him. This guy projected a really weak posture. He was like I stay here. Maybe I'm projecting now a weak posture. I don't feel weak, but he was standing and speaking very diligently and, answering the questions and so on. We have our current dean. She's a woman, but she's an incredibly strong woman. She's a very strong leader. So she was walking all over the place, like this. And she really projected like a football coach, She projected this energy and this strength from her. I can't do this, you know, in the end it's personality, and she's this personality. But and you know, as I said, this advice applies also to men and to women. It's just how to communicate for success. Okay. Risk attitude. Now, this is really important, you know. Take risks and make decisions. Don't be hesitant. Don't wait to have a full consensus and to have the whole group agree. Because if everybody agrees, somebody else is going to claim the credit for what was decided. It won't be any more your idea. They'll forget that it was all your idea. So try to get support, but don't strive for full consensus, you know, and always don't forget to emphasize that this is what you want. And ask for things. Ask and ask. If you don't ask, you won't get by default. So you're cutting your chances. Always ask for things. And focus. Men are usually more single-minded, and they focus on the problem which they're dealing with at the moment. But women have this strength that they can have many things in their mind all the time at the same time. And it is a strength. You know, it is a distraction, but it's useful. In science it's useful because it brings other perspectives, other viewpoints, and original ideas, and other people. They tend to bring also other people in the discussion. So use it to your advantage. But when you bring an additional point, imagine that you're in a male group discussing, and they're all focused on discussing something, and suddenly you have this other idea, which is very different. Find the right time. Let them first tire discussing whatever they're discussing, very focused, and then propose your idea. Because if you inject your idea when they're not all done, somebody else, they will ignore you, you know, and they will again propose something, whatever in their stream of thought, and it will remain unnoticed, right? And also keep it to the point, right? It's not a good way to suggest something new and then go on the tangent and something completely different. This is not productive, of course. Okay, so I think I'm finishing now. So monitor your own behavior. These guidelines or this kind of advice, you know, I will share this presentation with you and you have the talk. You know, next time when you're in a meeting, just try to observe how people are behaving. It's like a theater. And try to analyze how you're behaving yourself, right? Just observe yourself from the side if you can. And you know, you will discover that you're doing many things which you can improve, and you will discover why some people are so successful in your environment. They're doing the things right. Okay, so you can change it once you're aware of your behavior. You can change it. So think of yourself as a leader. You know. So okay, I'm finished now. So I will be very happy to answer questions if you have some questions.